guys, I'm Daniel. Today we're going to do a bit of troubleshooting. We're going to go into loose motor connection and how to fix that problem. So what can happen from time to time, you go to plug in your battery in your gun and you pull the trigger and absolutely nothing happens. If that is the case, usually that indicates some kind of electrical issue where a wire is disconnected or loose or something like that. So in this case we're going to go over the motor connection. So usually in terms of an electrical problem, the first place you guys do want to check even before this step, check your fuse, check and see if the buffer tube connection might have gotten pulled out or something like that. That's still not the case. Maybe it might be the motor connection. So now the M4, for example, you have the main motor that powers the gun is in the grip here. What happens is that motor, it rattles, it shakes, and it powers the rest of the gun. There are two connections, a positive and a negative wire that are connected to that motor. Since it is vibrating and the gun's constantly firing and you're running around and playing with it, then one of those connections can come loose and just fall off. So that could happen from time to time. No big deal. So I'm going to show you guys how to go in and diagnose it and fix it. Alright guys, so let's get into it. A few things you guys are going to need. You guys do need your battery to test fire to make sure the gun is working or not. Depending on your gun, you're either going to need some Allen keys or you're going to need, a lot of times it's a Phillips screwdriver. So those are pretty common tools most people should have easy access to. The other thing that you guys are going to need that's going to help make this problem not happen again is a set of pliers. So first off, we're going to test the gun and see if we can figure out what's going on. At this point the battery's plugged in and we have it on safe and full auto and we have absolutely no sound. So once again that usually indicates some kind of electrical issue. So at this point we're going to check those motor connections to see if maybe one of those came loose during firing. So depending on what gun you have, these two screws on the front and back, those are the screws that keep the base plate to the gun. Those are usually kept in either with an Allen key or a lot of the times also a Phillips screwdriver too. So you can use whatever is according to your gun. This one's going to be Allen keys. Also that screw in the middle, that is your motor height adjustment screw. That's something you actually usually don't want to mess with unless you know what you're doing. What that screw actually does is it physically pushes the motor in closer to the gears on the inside or farther away. So that's only as kind of an as-need basis. Once again, if you don't know what you're doing, if you haven't done it before, this is usually something you don't want to do because you could cause troubles if you're not doing it right. So we're going to take off the two screws on the top and the bottom to gain access to the motor, and we'll take off this base plate. Pay attention to where all the screws are. These are smaller screws, you don't want them rolling around and you don't want to lose them. Once you take off this base plate, underneath the base plate, a lot of the times, not always, but a lot of times there is a spacer. So this silver spacer right here is a spacer between the base plate and the motor itself, so that's pretty important as well. Make sure you don't lose that and keep that in place. So right now we're just going to put everything else to the side. As you can see, as soon as we took the base plate off, this motor connection came loose, and so once again that happens just from firing. It just vibrates and rotates and just kind of shakes off a little bit. So what we're actually going to do is disconnect both of them and take a look at the motor. At this point usually you can just reconnect them and you'll be good to go, but I want to show you guys the motor itself. So after they're both disconnected, this is a long type motor that powers most M4 AEGs and a couple other types of AEGs as well. So if you guys, let me see if I can get a close up here. There's a small tab right there. This one's the negative. On this side, this is the positive. That's where those motor connections or those wire connections connect to the motor itself. So I'm going to show you guys without it inside the gun. That little tab once again there is going to slide over, and that's how it connects like that. So naturally you want to do both of them while it's inside the gun, so that will give you guys an idea of how it's supposed to connect. So when you put the motor back in, make sure everything is tucked to the side. So something that you do, if this is something that's happening like often, what could be happening as well is maybe the wires, the connections on here, they're not crimping down on top of the motor tabs enough. And so that's what you're going to use the pliers for. You want to be very gentle if you guys do take these steps. Be careful. Where what I'm doing here is I'm actually going to squeeze these connections together a little bit more. So when I put it on the motor, it's going to squeeze tighter on it. So there's a less chance of them actually coming off. So it was the red one that came off. So what I'm going to do is just a little squeeze, just to squeeze them together a little bit. And so when I put them back on the motor, it's going to be a little bit more sturdy. So usually depending on how the wires are set, you want to kind of mimic how it came out. I'm going to plug back in the negative wire. That one's good. And then plug back in the red wire. Okay, so those are both in. And then so usually what I'll do is I'll use my pliers, get a very, very gentle hold, just to kind of wiggle it up and down, just to make sure they don't come off. If I'm doing, very little force and I pull it up and both, the wires come off, obviously that's way too loose. So kind of use a little common sense there, and you can get an idea of, you want it to be crimped down, not so tight that it's impossible to take off. Also be careful because those wires, that little L shape that you have there, is kind of delicate. If you were to bend it, you can also break that off too. So be careful with that. At this point, we have both the connections on there and they look like they're snug and they're good to go, so we're going to reassemble everything else. You have the spacer at the bottom of the base plate. Kind of tilt it to the side and have everything line up together well. Close everything up, grab your screws, and lock everything back down. So at this point, we have both the motor connections reconnected. So if that was the problem with the gun should be working fine again. So make sure you guys don't over tighten these screws. Usually just get them tight and then give them maybe a little quarter of a turn, probably not even that, maybe like another eighth of a turn just to tighten it. That should be good. Plug in the battery and let's see if we got lucky. Yep, and we're good to go. So that's how you're going to fix a loose motor connection, and that's also kind of the internals with the motor as well. So pretty simple fix. Take your time when you guys are working on this. If you guys are nervous and you feel like it's something you can't handle, definitely send it into Airsoft technician to work on. Otherwise, I hope this helps. Alright guys, so that was how to fix a loose motor connection on your gun. As you can see, not super complicated. Take your time and pay attention to what you're doing and you guys should be able to fix that. If you guys do have any doubts, don't do it on your own. Take it to a professional Airsoft technician who can do it correctly. Otherwise, thanks for watching guys and hope this helps.
I'm Sergeant Scott Graham from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. I'm here to remind you to always wear eye protection when using your Airsoft gun. Airsoft is a lot of fun, but it's not worth losing an eye.